Welcome to the Deep Dive Podcast. Becoming the dad God has called you to be takes a deeper dive. Dads too often stay at surface level. So let's dive deep into today's podcast.
Welcome to the Dad Deep Dive Podcast. Today we sit down with Alan Radwanski, and Jeff talks to him about the importance of huddling. Huddles are groups of men, small groups of men, who meet to share life's struggles and trials, and also to be equipped to be the dad that God has called us to be. And Alan is our number one champion who is showing what it really looks like to change men's lives as they get together. And his stories are powerful. So you're going to really love this episode, and we're glad that you're a part of this Deep Dive Podcast.
All right. Well, Alan, man, it's so good to have you. And I think you win the prize for traveling the farthest across this greater Houston area. I mean, is it Pearland or Alvin?
Pearland, yeah, I'm down in Pearland. So I was waiting for the Amarillo signs to start showing up. I mean, I felt like I was on the road forever, but no, it's a good drive. I'm one of those type of people that, put me in the truck or, good music and with my thoughts, and I'm happy. So it was a good trip up here, but it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while, and nice. I'm excited to share with our audience, how we connected.
Sure.
I know that story, but we want to share that story with our audience. So today we're going to talk about dads need dads. But before we get to that topic, I want you to tell us a little bit about you, and you talk about your family and what you do and your how long you've been married and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, excellent, Jeff. So Alan Radwanski, and I am a husband to a wonderful wife, Evelyn. We've been married 15 years, and really just a lucky guy. I mean, she's a super supportive wife, wonderful mother. Very intentional in her faith. And so just blessed from that sense. I have 3 kids, a daughter, Anna, who is 11, 2 sons. My oldest is Ben, he's 8, and then our youngest, Evan, is about to turn 6 here in April. So busy household, lots of opportunities to try and fail as a parent and a father, but it's a loving household, and so I'm just happy in that sense. I think it's important to me to be a good father, and I was fortunate to have good father figures in my life, and still do today. So I shouldn't put that as past tense. My father was always there. I was adopted, when I was very, very young. So I don't know my birth parents, but I never even considered that my adoptive parents were anything other than just my real parents. So folks would find out I was adopted, and they'd ask you, or they kind of expect something different from my parents. But my parents have always been very loving and supportive, and my father was a good father figure. My parents divorced when I was young, so there was that dynamic of going to see my father every other weekend, and so he was pulled out of my life somewhat, but I always knew he was there for me, and that that's been a big part of creating the man I am today, as well as my grandparents. I've had fantastic grandparents, and my grandfathers have been very influential on my life as well. So I've been blessed in just having that. That father figure, or father's presence, although probably not perfect, but I don't think any of us are, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And that's just been a big part of, who I am as a father today.
Yeah, so 6 and 8 and 11.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before we started recording that you had been out in the soccer fields this week.
Oh, yeah, geez. And I don't know how broad of an audience this has, but, in Houston, it's we're thin blood, right? And it's been chilly here the last couple of days, but yeah, sports are big in our house, and so both my boys play soccer. My daughter, she runs track. I like to run as well, so I get to go out and run with her, or through the neighborhood and things like that. Yeah, we have basketball season as well, so we're wrapping up our last games of basketball through Upwards this Saturday, and so yeah, full on in that overlap of sports seasons right now. So it's a really busy time.
You know, the thing about, and when we have young fathers listening, and they can probably relate to your description of your busy schedule, and can resonate with that. But it doesn't. I will tell you, as a now a granddad, those times they're fleeting. I mean, it's like when you're in the middle of it, it feels like it may never end. And you catch yourself, going in circles and being the taxi driver for now the Uber driver for the neighborhood kids and for your own kids and so forth. And it seems like you're always going from one event to the next and, looking at your calendar and thinking, do we have too much on the calendar or whatever? But it goes by so fast. And then when it's over, it's over.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah, no, I know you're a coach, or we're a coach, and that's been a big part of who you are. And I coach some of my boys' soccer teams, and I'm like the assistant coach for the basketball teams. And I can only take them so far because I'm not all that well versed in either one of those sports. Yeah. But I never anticipated being a coach. That wasn't something that really interested me until I had kids and I started seeing them play sports, and I just wanted to be a part of it. And my son does this, my middle son Ben does this cute thing every night when I put him to bed. He asks, what's your favorite animal? What was your favorite thing today? And what was your least favorite thing? And whatever, almost without fail, the favorite thing will be whatever activity I participated in with my kid that day. It was watching you play soccer, or it was your basketball game, or it was, going on a run with my daughter. And so those things, never what I really thought would be the highlight of my day always end up, when I reflect on it, being the highlight of my day. So I do try to, appreciate it and be in the moment. Yeah, sometimes life gets super crazy. I mean, there's not a whole lot of downtime. I got a wife and I got to kind of fight to carve out time for ourselves. And, you kind of crash into bed at night. But to your point, yeah, sometimes the stress level gets high and it's, can be a little overwhelming, but, when I sit back and reflect on it, it still ends up, like I said, being the highlight of my day. And so I try to take a pause when life gets crazy and just appreciate the moment.
Yeah. Well, and your kids, even though in the moment they may not always communicate their appreciation, but when they look back, what they're going to remember is how present you were, and they're going to remember that as a highlight as well. And sometimes we take that for granted as a parent. It's like the old Stephen Covey used to tell the story about taking his son fishing, and he wrote, I think at night he was writing in his journal, went fishing with my son, didn't catch anything, a day wasted. But then before he went to bed, he saw the light down the hallway, and he walked down to his son's room, and his son had fallen asleep. And he had also written in his journal that had, I guess he had fallen asleep. The book was on top of his chest, and he picked it up to see what his son had written. And his son had written, "Went fishing with my dad, didn't catch a thing. The greatest day of my life." Oh, yeah. So sometimes our perspective, we get caught up in the busyness, but the kids, they know and they remember that you were there. And again, they may not. As a 6-year-old or 8-year-old or even 11-year-old, they may not tell you, but they remember. They will remember. So today's kind of unofficial title is, as dads need dads.
Yep.
And so why would you support that statement, or why is that important? Why do you see the need for that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned now, I think being a good father is very important because it has such an impact on the kids. Shared with the audience, how my dad shaped me. You talk about fishing as well, and I'm a big fisherman, and I look back, it's because I went fishing with my dad, a handful of times when I was young, and I knew it was important to him, so then it became part of my identity as well. And so being a father is important, but it's hard. I mean, you got to juggle a career, a marriage, just life in general, right? And it can be overwhelming. We don't all have the answers. We make mistakes, and so I think it's important to have other fathers that you can talk to and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. What do you do? And they can provide some guidance. If they can't provide guidance, maybe they can commiserate and like, I'm struggling with the same thing.
Right.
I mean, we had my men's group huddle last night, and one of the topics or one of the conversation that we were having was, our kids, they don't listen. You'll say something to them, and it's like they don't even acknowledge, right? And so then you say it a little bit louder. They still don't acknowledge, and before you know it, you're yelling at them, and we don't want to do that. I don't want to be yelling at my kids to get their attention. And this was almost like a universal thing of what was happening with every dad in the group was struggling with the same issue. So we talked it through, right? And okay, well, anybody having success on this? What are you doing? And just that support, I think, is important to know that you're not alone. You're not the only one that's screaming at your kids. It's not right, but it helps you feel a little bit better that we're all struggling together. And then you kind of share things that help you do that a little bit better. So I think, that's why I think it's important to me, because none of us are going to do it well on our own.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Well, one of the messages and one of the things that excites me about having conversations like this that we get to record is the potentiality of that one man that hears that one thing that allows them to make a change that affects maybe a generation, Yeah. So, and we can't, we're not islands, A lot of times, man, we think we're going to do it alone, and we got this, but it helps when you've got someone else, as you mentioned, if nothing else, to like support in the support role or the commiserations, the similarities of raising kids. It just gives you a little bit more hope sometimes, and sometimes you realize you're doing a pretty good job, but Suit Up Ministries, we talk about simplistically. We are there to encourage dads, number one, that are already in the game, like these guys that are sitting around your table or wherever you meet in your backyard or what have you. They're intentional. They're in the game, but who's telling them that hey, good job, Alan, man, hang in there, or thank you for doing that, or thank you for being the dad that you are. And so Suit Up, one of its goals is to encourage dads that are already in the game. The other one is to give those that aren't to get off the bench, to insert themselves in the game. And so the huddle that you're talking about, and I love, we call our huddle leaders champions. And so really for the listeners, I want them to know that you really technically were officially our first champion in the greater Houston area. And we have champions in Uganda and Kenya now, and spread all over greater Houston. But you have been one of the first and one of the most faithful. And so in that role, first of all, I would love our listeners to know how we got connected in the first place.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a good story.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think how long ago. It was three-ish years ago.
Anything
probably
before COVID is kind of foggy. It seems
Indeed. So I was pretty active in attending these luncheons in greater Houston area called Toolbox Lunch, and invite the audience to Google that and look it up. It's a really cool program. It's for businessmen that are Christian, and how do you bring your faith into the working world. And so I was attending one of those luncheons, and they bring in great speakers all the time that are inspirational to share. And you opened up. I know you opened up with you're the leading act for a
was it a Marine?
A Marine that had a fantastic story that it was had a book that he was that he had just written and was getting out there, and so I was excited to hear from him, but your message really resonated with me, and I've always been As far as my faith goes, I like to be active. I like to be the say the hands of God, right? I want to be out there doing stuff. Evangelism is probably not my strength. My strength is going and doing. And so I've been on mission trips, serving in Mexico, serving in Central America, building houses, drilling wells, things like that I think are important. What I always noticed was the folks that we were serving, they didn't have much, right, from a material standpoint. And so again, the house, the clean drinking water, things like that was what they were needing, but their faith was solid as a rock. I mean, I would contrast them with, my peer group, and I'm like, man, their faith is stronger than, the folks that I interact with. And I'm like, what can we do? How do we strengthen the faith of those around us? And I've been in small groups, generally couples and things like that, and we're there to support us and try to further our faith here, and in our own neighborhoods and in our own peer group. And so that was something I knew was needed. And when you were talking, we shared a similar past as far as our parents and how we were raised and things like that. So that resonated, but then also what you were trying to do and engage fathers, that's what I was kind of at the same time had this, this little, I don't know, this voice inside me or something saying, hey, how can we serve, my friends? How can I get my friends to be, further their walk with Christ? Like you said, they're already, devoted, they're active dads, right? They got the A, they're active there, they're Christians. And so how can I help them in their walk with God, and then how can that help them be, eventually after hearing you, how can that help them be better fathers? And then ultimately that, that starts to, I won't say the cycle, but it starts the journey of, then they're going to build, their kids are going to have a firmer foundation to stand on. And then hopefully, our grandkids will have even a firmer foundation and be starting, even further along than we are. And I could just see that that's an opportunity. So that's when we started I went and talked to you afterwards and say, hey, tell me more about what you do with Suit Up Ministries. And at the time, I was actually trying to working with our church down in Pearland, Redeemer Church, and we were trying to get a men's ministry going. And you had talked about how you were, you did a lot here at your church in men's ministry. And so that was I think the next step was getting you engaged with our, the men from my church.
That's right. I forgot at Liberty Kitchen, I think.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that we roundtabled.
Yeah. We all got together and shared some thoughts on how to get that ministry going. And but then we just stayed in contact and started talking about the huddles and the idea that you had and how you wanted to kind of maybe pivot what you were doing with Suit Up Ministries. And I think we just kind of started spitballing that a little bit.
Well, I always tell our team that we're looking for that one man. And so for that day, you were that one man, and literally you were that one man, because I think the other 199 went to rush the table, which is understandably so. I'm always, you never follow the Marine. You always go before the Marine, So, but I was, for you, thankfully, I wasn't an afterthought that you approached, and I looked at Mark, our president, and I said, see, there's our one guy. That's our one guy. And you've been faithful with us ever since. And so, like you said, it's been several years, and you've been ongoing. And, the model that you have created, we want to emulate that all over Houston. And we're doing that. It's as we talked about, it's been easier to do that for some reason in the middle of the heart of an African nation via Zoom than it has right here in right here in the United States. And so in 2008, when we started Suit Up Ministries, I never thought that the revival of the dad movement would start in Africa. Yeah. But you also have to go where it's fertile soil, and so, but we're trying to cultivate that here. And so I want to thank you for your persistence and diligence to because I think we can learn from, and our listeners can learn, if they're thinking about maybe wanting to find out more information about what it means to be a Huddle champion with Suit Up, maybe after listening to you and our conversation, how you facilitated that. Maybe we can get more of those to spring up over in the greater Houston area. So we know. So I kind of understand why you're involved in Suit Up. You've already kind of shared your heart with that. You saw that need, and so how did you create your huddle? What was the so we have this idea of training a huddle champion. So, but then how did you initiate your huddle? What was that process?
Good question. And part of it was I had been involved, as I mentioned, in small groups in the past. They're more focused on couples. So I hadn't been one that was just men. But what I had realized in being in several of those different small groups is, some of them just they didn't feel right, and they went on through for a season, a spring, a summer, and then they kind of fizzled out, and that's kind of been the experience that I had with small groups. And what I kind of realized was, you need to have some kind of commonality, and you need to be intentional on the fellowship part. It's maybe an overused Christian term, but just hanging out and getting to know the guys and getting to know them on a personal level, and building that foundation and that trust is important. So what I wanted to do is I already had a group of friends, and I knew they were good dads. I knew they probably struggled with same things I did. I'm not a perfect dad, and I get frustrated, and I could do it better. And I also wanted a kind of a support group, accountability group to help me as well on my being a good father, but being a Christian father, right? And so helping me on my faith journey. And so that was kind of the idea there is, well, let me start with the guys I know, and and not all of them were like best friends, right? They're in my social circle, and so I reached out to them and talked to asked probably about a dozen of them if they were interested in it, and about half a dozen of them said yes. And so I'm like, all right, well, let's start with that. And I had some folks that I knew I had talked to, and I knew they wanted to do something like this, and I knew they had a good foundation in good Christian foundation, and I knew they'd kind of be somebody I'd be able to lean on as well. And so I kind of, I won't say they're ringers, right? But I knew I had some folks in there that, if I had to turn to, that, they would help the conversation. And so that's kind of what we started with. And what we started on, it's barbecue in the Bible. So we started around something that we all like to do. We all like to, share a meal and eat barbecue. Mm-hmm. And so for the first, I don't know, probably year and a half, I picked up barbecue we met every other week, or we meet every other week.
Wow, that's
great.
And
I'd go pick up some Bighorn barbecue, and we tried a couple other places, but that's kind of where we ended up settling on. And I'd bring in some brisket and sausage, and we'd start off by eating some barbecue and just catching up with what everybody was doing at that point in time. And that kind of that was that social part that allowed us to just get to know each other and get comfortable with each other and be willing to share that, yeah, we're not perfect dads, we're not perfect Christians, and once you're able to do that, that's where meaningful conversation happens, and that's where change starts to happen. And so I never had like ambition of changing these guys overnight, or by the I think we started in the fall, by the end of the year or by spring. No, I'm in it for the long haul. If it takes, I don't know how long this group will stay together, but if it's 5 years running to, and it's still serving a need for these guys, then that's good. But as long as I see folks, making progress, that's kind of my goal. So I say all that because I'm not rushing it, right? I'm letting it just happen.
Right.
And I'm prayerful on it. And, I kind of, that's where the topics come. And that's where, Suit Up Ministries has been a huge help. One is you guys didn't come with any kind of preconceived, go do it like this, Alan. You kind of said, yeah, we're here for you if you need it.
Yeah.
And the material I used that we cover, that's been another, I think, reason why we've been successful. And so I get into, in the locker room that you have, have all the lessons, anywhere from a 4-week lesson to a 7-week lesson to these little 1-week hitters that we use quite a bit. But the guys love it. They love that, it's like a one-pager. So it's not like they feel burdened with all this homework that they have to prepare for. They can read it over their lunch break on the Thursday that we meet. Sometimes the guys they're honest. They show up. They're like, I haven't read it. I'm going to read it right now while we're eating barbecue and stuff like that. And the beauty of it is, if you're really new to this, if you haven't been a Christian your whole life, you're going to get something out of it. If you've been a Christian your whole life, it's Scripture. I mean, you're going to get something out of it. And we just let that conversation kind of happen based off those lessons that you've prepared, and they've been really good. And,
It makes me feel good, Alan, that we get that confirmation, because sometimes you don't know. It looks good on paper, just like a lot of things look good on paper, but what's the reality of it? So the goal is exactly what you just said, and I tell people purposefully, it's on an 8.5 by 11, front and back. We always ask those, we hope that you entertain those 3 questions. What did you hear? What did you learn? What are you going to do about it? And sometimes those 3 questions can be the lead-in for the next, like how'd it go? And if you're meeting every week or every other week or once a month, whatever the time period is between, you've had time to internalize that or not. And some guys probably come back and say, I've been really busy and I haven't really had time to focus on it. Others may say, well, this is what I've done since the last time we met, And I mean, that's just one. The other thing about being on one page is we hope, in theory, that they take that one page, they fold it in half, and they stick it in their Bible, and it's not cumbersome, and they can use it as a bookmark or whatever, and then it's a reminder, a constant reminder, as long as they know where their Bible is, that of what they talked about, and they some of those guys maybe accumulate those, and some of them toss it or whatever, or put it in the back of your Bible. I can't remember how many times I've been somewhere and I've flipped through my Bible listening to somebody do a message, or someone said, "Hey, let's turn to," and I go, "Oh yeah, that's when I went to camp last year," and that was it's a constant reminder. And then we didn't want it to also be burdensome to you as the champion. Like, I mean, literally, you could pick that up 15 minutes before. There's really no preparation. I mean, you as a leader could say, look, this is the topic that I picked, but we're going to go through this thing together. And it's just, some of them are a little bit more detailed than others. I hope the questions in the margin,
they're very helpful.
Generate. I mean, you can get stuck on one of those questions for the whole hour.
And we've done that. Yeah, we've never made it past, like question 1, right? And it just takes us down a path. And that's the other thing, is that I usually I'm not rigid to, we got to make it through every word in this paper. But to your point on, leading the huddle, I mean, it does make it so much easier as well. So for me, I know that I talk with the guys. I'm like, we got a 4-week lesson that we're going to do. And so we meet every other week. So, 4 lessons takes us for 2 months, basically, right? And I would do just that. I'll print it up, like talking about soccer. So I had my son has a soccer practice on Tuesdays, Thursdays. So I took him to soccer practice yesterday, and had the my one pager with me, and I told him. He knows. He's like, oh, it's. He sees that I have it in my hand. He's like, okay, you're going to be out here in 30 minutes or so. Yeah, I'm like, yeah. And so then I read through it. I reflect on it. I make some notes in the margins that I want to make sure that I pull out with the guys. And I spend 30 minutes to an hour preparing for the session. And then a lot of time I just let the Lord lead us to where He's going to take us in there. And so it is easier on the champion, right? A lot of times the hardest part for me was like making sure I got the barbecue ordered and running to pick it up. So that's been great. The guys have really responded to it. They like it. And so it's just been a real good fit.
Yeah. Well, and men listening, thinking about contemplating doing this, if you remember, I also said, I don't care how often you meet. We don't care where you meet. We don't care, how long you meet. Or really who you invite. That's all. But we want you to try to use our curriculum as a basis, as the primary resource. And the other thing is I mean, the Bible, let's face it, the Bible was not just written for dads. I mean, there are principles that are universal. So, sometimes I don't know if you've ever gotten this question or not, I'm not a dad, or, if I'm sharing this with other men, well, you would be one because you've used it. It's applicable to any group. It could be it could be really couples. It could be even women. I mean, it could be youth. It could be how you gear it. The idea though is to get men in the room that, like you said, that have that. If they have one thing in common and nothing else, they're dads.
Right.
Maybe even. Do you have some men in your group that are different life stage, maybe have a little bit older kids, or you pretty much
we're pretty. I mean, there's this. I want to think maybe the oldest kids are high school, and the youngest being maybe when we started there were some newborns, and so 2-3 years old now. So not a huge spectrum, but we do have kids in different fathers with kids in different stages of life, right? Dealing with high school thing, being bullied. Other ones, it's just ensuring the necessities that a 3-year-old requires, or something like that. So there's a little bit of a breadth there, but yeah, I mean, this is applicable to everybody. Yeah. If you're just a coach, you don't have your own kids, you'd get something out of this. If you're a grandfather, and so. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the success of ours is that there is some commonality there amongst us, which is helpful. But the lessons, I mean, if you're in a different phase of life, find a group that's similar to that, and link up with them, or start your own group and find some folks that are in that similar phase of life as you, and get them together. And if somebody wanted to join a group or start a group, what I think about it is like, you got nothing to lose. If that's kind of was my intent on starting this. I'm like, if it doesn't work, so be it. If the fit wasn't there, okay, I don't really lose anything. Maybe a little of your time, but you're gonna learn something. It's a no regret move in my opinion, and what you can get out of it can be ultimately life changing. So what I'd say is, find a huddle and join it. It'll be awkward at first, sure, just like meeting anybody, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be kind of that getting to know you phase.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the good thing to know is everybody that's there is being intentional, that they want to better themselves as a father or as a Christian, and so you got that commonality. So everybody's well intentioned. Now you might not have something in common with them. It might be just personality conflicts or whatever, and it doesn't work. Like I said, so be it. But there's probably a better chance that it is going to work. And then if it does, like I said, it can be life changing.
Well, it sounds like I hear a couple of things. You meet consistently.
Right.
Your goal is to meet every other week. You meet typically at the same place.
Yeah, we do. So COVID certainly threw a wrench into our plans. But starting off, we were meeting on my patio, and I'd bring the barbecue in. The original intent was we're going to go meet at a barbecue joint, and when we started, it kind of was right when COVID was starting to kind of raise his head, so we pivoted and said, let's just meet on my patio, and we did that pretty consistently. Last night we met at a restaurant because it was cold here for Houston standards, and we didn't want to freeze on my back patio, and my kids are going to sleep inside, so we didn't want to go inside a house. So we met at Center Court Pizza and Brew, and we sat there around a table and ordered some chicken wings, and so we've kind of moved off of our barbecue, but it's still centered around food.
Change it up every once in a while.
Yeah, and so but yeah, 90% of the time we've been meeting in the same place. It's my house. Sometimes we'll go to another gentleman's house to host it, but for the most part, pretty consistent there. Consistent of every other week. We'll pivot if there's major schedule conflicts. I mean, I've been there where only one guy showed up, and I'm like, hey, like you said, only one shows up. That's comes and talks to you, that's fine, because the Lord's working, and I'm going to have that. We have a fantastic conversation, whether there's one person there or all 7 of the gentlemen show up. We do take breaks, and so over at holidays, over Christmas, we kind of took a break because life gets really busy at that point in time. I think we took a break over summer as well for a month. But we've been pretty consistent there, so yes. Well,
what would you say to a man that's listening that maybe is hesitant about, taking that initiative, that first step?
Like I said, there's got nothing to lose. Just go try it out. If it doesn't fit, I wouldn't give up on it, but go find another small group. But don't give up on it too soon either. I mean, we've had, one of the things I joke with the guys is we'd open in a prayer, and I'd always offer up to the group, does anybody want to lead us in prayer? It's always eyes are down, guys looking around. Let me get my one pager out and make sure I'm reading my one pager. Oh, that went on for probably 6 months before I had somebody
jump in
and start leading a prayer. And it's because they weren't comfortable with it, and that's fine. So don't give up on it if it's a little uncomfortable at first. It's a journey, and so I'd say get in there, try it. Like I said, everybody's going to be they're like-minded. They're trying to accomplish. They're there for the same reason, to better themselves, and give it a chance. And I think you'll be surprised at what you find.
Do you do in between times? Do you do any type of email communication with guys or texting or what to kind of keep it?
We do. It's funny, Jeff. It's we have a group text, and it was primarily started just for logistics purposes, right? I'd remind them that we have this week is our huddle. I'll send out, remind them to check their email, because I'll be sending out the one pager for them to review. And, over 2 years, it's turned into, memes start showing up on there. Jokes are passed around. It's kind of just, I don't know, there's probably 2 or 3, texts that occur every single day now on this group text. And so that's actually been something I think that's kind of brought the group together, because you're just joking with one another. They teased me, I think 2 or 3 sessions ago, it was cold again, so we went to another wing spot. And they got there before me, and they all devised a joke that they're going to tell me that they're out of wings. I'd have to order something different, and the waitress went along with it. So I was like, well, I guess I'll have the quesadilla, and then they all just broke out laughing. And so we actually went to Big City Wings, and now they always joke of, are we meeting at Big City Quesadilla this week, or are we meeting at your house? And so it's just that. That relationships are built. Just guys like to joke with each other, and that's how that's kind of gone along. But I'll send out emails, and we have our group text, and then sometimes we get together. We've tried to do a couple service projects as well. So we had a friend that was moving, and she was going through a divorce, and so we got together to help her fix up her house and repair some windowsills and paint and do some things like that. And so we'll try to do some things like that. We haven't done as much as we would like, but it's really just kind of formed into something more than just this this huddle. It's I feel like this group is just a really solid group of dads now that at some point maybe we go and we start bringing other dads in and see how it grows, and they can kind of have their own little influence, but we'll see where it goes.
So have you had any individual feedback from some of the members? I mean, have they expressed to you sometime, in that period of time you guys have met, their gratitude or maybe grateful for the group?
Absolutely, and that's been extremely helpful for me, because sometimes you're like, it's radio silence for a while, or, you have 2 or 3 sessions where only, maybe 2 or 3 guys are showing up, and, 3 or 4 of them are missing, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? Is this even reaching them?
Yeah.
And I'll get that feedback. This has been great, Alan. This has really helped me with my, sometimes with my marriage, right? Or, communicating with my wife, with my kids. We actually had a gentleman in the group that just recently got baptized. And I'm not taking credit for this group, but I like to think that it played a part, right,
Sure.
in the journey, and so all that's really encouraging. But yeah, I've had really positive feedback from the guys. I think they look forward to it. So yeah.
Well, in a more intimate group, and it shows men that it's okay to be sometimes vulnerable or transparent, and like you said, it takes time to get there. I think about the very first small group that I led at the church where I'm at over a decade ago. That very first Wednesday night group that now has just evolved. I've stepped out of that, and there's been multiple leaders, but that Wednesday night group has been there. We just planted that seed. Yeah. But I think about I can visualize those men around the table the first time in the book study we were doing, and I think it took them a while, but they realized this was not just going to be a water cooler conversation, how's the weather and did you see the Texans? It's not. You talk about those things because we all do as men, but it was going to go, and their reluctancy at the beginning to share. I mean, first of all, the miracle that they were even around the table. True. And that you can get 7 guys around the table. For the most part, even 2 or 3, that they would intentionally get in a car and drive to your house or wherever is almost a miracle in itself. And regardless of what they do when they get there, so anything after that is just really sometimes a bonus.
Absolutely.
But I can feel you. I can understand you. When we do this, a weekly blog and we send it out to 500 men, I wonder, is anybody even out there? And then I get that one message or 2 messages or something, or a topic that hits a chord, and several people respond. Not that's not why we do it, but we all need some type of reassurance,
Definitely.
Encouragement. And I think that's what the group is. If nothing else, it's an opportunity for you to encourage each other, that you have what it takes to be that daily active, devoted, dad. And think about, have you ever thought about how many children those 7 men have? And then think about those men and women that are your children, your 3, that will grow up. Like your son knows that you got, even at soccer practice, okay, you're going to be out. He remembers that you're preparing for something.
Right.
That's even, that you're mirroring that, and the multiplication, the replication.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I've thought about it for myself, right? Because my son, the same one I take to the soccer practice, he keeps encouraging me to invite the dads at the soccer practice to my small group. And he's like,
wow.
He's like,
you got a little evangelist.
Dad, did you ask so-and-so to go to your huddle?
Yeah.
Oh, not yet. I got to kind of still work up to that. But he keeps prodding me there. And so I can see that it's having an effect on him. That's going to be an expectation of his life, that he's going to be involved in a men's group. Right. And so until you just said it, I never really thought about it for all the kids that are, being fathered by this group. Because I think everyone in the group has at least 2 kids, if not 3, 4. And so there's probably 20 kids out there that are going to be impacted by this. And so, that's a good point. And
Well, it's that intentionality that that we need, and our wives and our children and the families that we serve, and our workplace, our church, whatever, to see our intentionality. People watch, and we don't really realize it at the time. Sometimes it's not necessarily what we say; it's what we do. And so, Alan, I wish we could clone you. I mean, I wish we could just. I mean, we need
Careful what you ask for.
Yeah. Well, Well, the idea, if we've got men out there that are listening, that we're looking for champions. We're looking for men that will heed the call, that have already put themselves in a position to be that dad, but would take that next step and be a champion and to champion other dads.
Yeah.
And again, it can be in the neighborhood restaurant, bar. It could be in the backyard. This is a non-denominational. It is all about. It's biblical. It's answering the call to be the dad that God has called us to be, and then sharing that and mirroring that on with other men. And so what final thoughts would you say to any man out?
Yeah, I would say one I'll offer up, if anybody is thinking about doing this and they have questions, I mean, they can get a hold of me. Yeah, I mean, they can get a hold of me through you or through the website. But you know, I'll make myself available to talk with them. But don't be discouraged or intimidated by if you're not a biblical scholar, because I certainly am not. Right, I'm still early on in my journey there. The conversation's going to lead itself. You have fantastic resources to help somebody that's interested in this. All you got to do is get the guys together, pick a time, and make it happen. And you're going to be surprised about how the Lord's going to take over. He's working through you, Jeff, and through Suit Up Ministries and the material that's there. I can provide some guidance there, but don't be intimidated. It's not that hard to do, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, like I said, I look forward to these Thursdays. It's definitely a highlight of my week when it's coming up, and so yeah, just jump in there, do it. It'll be a fantastic experience.
In a resource that we continue to reference, the locker room is really new. And we, as you know, we're still working out some of the kinks, but I think we've got it, the registration fixed now. But the idea is that it's a resource not only for churches and church groups, but smaller huddles and even individuals. Because if nothing else, what this global pandemic has taught us that a lot of us are at home, a lot of us became separated, and a lot of us need to are remote. So we wanted to increase, for our listeners out there, we wanted to increase our online presence. So we created this what we call one-stop shop for dads, a resource. And there's a lot of things out there for women and children and youth, but there's not necessarily always something specifically geared towards men and even more specifically towards dads. So the locker room. So if, there's video on here, what we're doing right here will be potentially a podcast that men will listen to, especially those that are considering doing on the fence maybe about being a huddle leader, being a champion. And so your words, I know, will inspire them, encourage them. If we can do it, there are a lot of those listening that can do it. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm not taking the credit for it. I just heeded the call, and it comes together. And I think, anybody that's considering it, they're in a position. They're being called for a reason, right? If they're considering it already, so just go ahead and jump in. Like you said, get in the game, and it's going to take care of itself.
Well, Alan, I appreciate you being here today. I appreciate your intentionality and your diligence and your determination to continue to do this, to be that champion. And thanks for being the husband, and thanks for being the dad that you are, and thank you for being a champion.
Absolutely, Jeff. No, thank you, because like I said, this has been life-changing for me as well, and it's come from the idea and the support of Suit Up Ministries. So I'm thankful as well.
Well, to God be the glory.
Amen.
Amen.